Hello,
Hey,
how's it going?
all right. I am here. I got your email with the links. Uh, there's 19 people registered.
Are you gonna be, can you like do the waiting room and like close it? I see
Yeah,
there's two people in there now, but
I'll handle that. Are you
once,
are you wanting to close it right now?
no, I think
Okay.
like probably right at noon.
Yeah,
We'll
I'll
just
handle
like
all
let
that.
everybody in and close it. So we'll see if anybody shows up. I don't know, but I've got it. Like I'll just talk to the wind and we can share the recording if there's, I mean, I guess there's two people there. So,
I think more will come. 19 signed up. Only one of them is one of our staff.
oh, okay.
So 18.
Yeah, it's weird. Like you shared me the link to this, but when I clicked on it, it was like register for the meeting. But then I logged into my Zoom account and it still didn't show up in my Zoom like meetings. But then I clicked on the link again and I didn't have to register. It let me in. So can't
I should,
quite figure that
yeah,
out. But
I should have set you. I mean, I set you as an alternate host.
yeah,
So
it
you,
just didn't show it up as like my meetings, I think, because I didn't make the meeting. But anyway, it worked. It just took me a second. So I don't know if
I
it's going to be
think
the case for other people.
in Zoom, there's a little like ones that are hosted by you versus hosted by
Hmm.
everyone you have access to, and it might be selected down that way so you can't see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as long as you're good. Um, looks like I have host tools if I need them.
Yeah.
And what's your style feeling like? Are you wanting to kind of get through everything and hold questions till the end or let people pop in?
Probably.
Okay.
I didn't like time myself, and I feel like I've got a lot of stuff, so I don't know quite how long it's going to take me to get through it.
Yeah. So maybe I will just put in chat to ask people to put
Yeah,
their comments there and we'll address them at the end.
yeah. So we could probably let everybody in and close the waiting room if.
I'll probably stay off camera unless you want to look at
No,
me.
that's fine.
Okay.
But I don't have my chat up or anything, so just like you feel
Yep.
free to interrupt me if there's something I need to address. Like I probably won't see it.
Okay. Roger that. Okay. I'll take care of it.
Alrighty. Good, I guess just briefly afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our discussion about the LAMP grants, and I've also thrown in here the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Grant Program, which isn't one of the LAMP grants, but it is a program that the second round of funding actually just opened up today. So I'm going to talk about that as well. I'm Tom Buller, the Executive Director here at the Kansas Rural Center. I've got quite a bit of material to cover, so I'm going to try and plow through that. If you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat. I should have time at the end to address those, or if it's something really urgent, I think one of my colleagues will let me know. But yes, please feel free to put any questions in the chat as we move along. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So what the LAMP program, so we're going to start by talking about LAMP grants and doing a deep dive into the different grant programs covered by that. And then we'll get to the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Program. So what LAMP stands for is the Local Agriculture Marketing Program. And so that's going to be the first of many programs with like acronyms. I'm going to try and avoid acronyms as much as I can. But the local agriculture marketing program was established by the 2018 Farm Bill, and it was a consolidation of several grant programs that already existed. So these programs are divided under two USDA agencies. So the Agriculture Marketing Service manages the farmers market promotion program, the local food promotion program, and the regional food systems partnership program. All three of those, the application window is open right now. Those applications are due on June 27th. I'm going to dive into each of those programs in depth, but they are somewhat complicated. So if you've never done a federal grant before, you can see that they're open. It would be a pretty big lift to pull one of these together with a pretty limited experience in the next 2.5 weeks. Not impossible, but certainly challenging. So just want to kind of let you know that if you've already started working on them, maybe we can provide some insight or information that can be helpful, particularly later on. And it's also something good for maybe future opportunities if you haven't started an application. The other program that is managed by USDA Rural Development is usually open earlier in the spring, and that is the Value Added Producers Grant. So this year, that program closed in April, I think April 18th, I believe. As I mentioned, these were all established by the Farm Bill, which who knows when we're going to get another Farm Bill. But as long as they keep extending the current version, and hopefully in whatever new version Congress passes when it comes to that, these programs will continue to be funded. But what that means is as these programs have been developed through congressional action, they are recurring. So more or less, the dates change somewhat, but the sort of annual schedule of these grants coming up um, happens every year. So usually around now, sometimes maybe a month earlier, these programs will open up. So if you can't pull together an application this year, but you're interested in it, there should be another opportunity next year for these LAMP grants. So the LAMP, Local Agricultural Marketing Program, united those programs, and their sort of collective goals of that, Congress's goals of that program, are to connect and cultivate regional food economies through public-private partnerships, support development of business plans, feasibility studies, strategies for value-added production, and local regional food infrastructure. Um, Strengthen the capacity of regional food systems development through community collaboration and expansion of mid-tier value chains. I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to local food promotion program, but not going to dive too deep on what mid-tier value chains are. It is kind of a niche verbiage, I guess. Um, improve improve income and economic opportunities for producers and food businesses through job creation. And then this was the goal for the USDA when these programs were created, was to simplify the application processes and reporting processes for the program. And that those are sort of the ongoing goals of the LAMP program overall. And I'll talk a little bit about that last point in simplifying the application processes. Just a few short notes. This will really apply to all three of those agriculture marketing service grants. So the Farmers Market Promotion Program, the Local Food Promotion Program, and the Regional Food Systems Partnership Program. Those this year, those applications are all due on June 27th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. These are online applications that you would submit through grants.gov. So you need to take that deadline very seriously. It's not something you can turn it in late, even if you have a good excuse. Sometimes there are computer issues or glitches or things like that. So definitely, if this is due at 11:59 p.m., you don't want to be waiting until you know, Friday afternoon to pull your application together or make sure everything uploads or hit submit. Earlier is definitely better. I do know people that have worked on federal grants, had a completed application, been ready to submit before the deadline, and run into a technical glitch, like a computer system error, and not get their application in time, which is probably the worst outcome for everybody involved, because you will have spent all that time and not get and not even get a chance, you know. Um, So there are some other things that if you're applying for these programs or mostly any other program, federal program, honestly, you need to have. So one is obtaining your organization's unique entity identifier, which is the UEI number. Most of the time you get one of these. You may need to make sure you have an active sam.gov account, which, going through that process will get you that UEI number. But that can take several weeks. Um, if you don't have that and you're really hoping to apply for one of these grants, definitely probably get on that this afternoon. I've done that for a number of different entities. And I've never had it take 4 weeks, but I have had it take more than a week before. So also obtaining a taxpayer ID number or entity ID number, can take a little while. And getting onto grants.gov and setting up an authorized organizational representative can take a few weeks. So definitely these are things that if you are hoping to apply this cycle, need to get on very quickly. If you are looking at future cycles, these are the kinds of things you could take care of now. Like I said, a lot of federal grant opportunities require all of these things. So it doesn't really hurt to set them up now when you're not under a time crunch. All right, with those sort of overview pieces set in place, I am going to run through the farmers market promotion program. And I apologize. Usually, when I do, talks like this, I like to have some visual interest on my slides. But pretty much all the slides I have here today are very heavy text dumps. And I will be frank that all of the language, maybe not all of it, almost all of the language here will be taken directly from the request for applications or other information that's up about these programs. So I didn't write all of these things. So if something seems worded very weirdly, that is for a very specific reason. And the reason I did that rather than trying to summarize is often those requests for applications and the information that gets put out by the USDA about these programs, the language is very specifically written and can have very specific meaning. With all of that said, a lot of these terms where it becomes kind of questionable within those requests for applications will have more specific definitions. So I don't have time to go through and define all of these terms here. Um, uh, but there are often definitions in that request for application. So if you're curious about, uh, what is a direct producer to consumer marketing, here's a little parenthetical that says that, but there can be more information. But anyway, now to get into the details here of the Farmers Market Promotion Program, which is sometimes called the FMPP. That is really working not just to support farmers markets, even though you might guess that by the title, but it is really working to support direct to producer to consumer markets. So that could be a variety of forms and increase access to locally and regionally produced products. So getting into this first sub point here, what does direct producer to consumer mean? The specific language they use says including direct producer to retail, direct producer to restaurant, and direct producer to institutional marketing. So this isn't just a producer selling at a farmer's market. It could be a producer selling to a restaurant. It could be a producer selling to an institutional market like a school or a hospital. What it can't be is a producer selling to an intermediary like a food hub or some other sort of what that would be your mid-tier value chain. So that group in the middle of doing aggregation. But it doesn't just have to be a producer selling directly to a customer at a farmer's market. So there are a number of things that they say here qualify, including farmers markets, roadside stands, agritourism opportunities, community supported agriculture or CSA programs, or online sales. Um, this encourages the development of value added produce agricultural products. And it your project doesn't have to do all of these things. So these are a list of things that are covered. Developing marketing strategies for producers of local food and value-added products, facilitating regional food chain coordination development, promoting new business opportunities and marketing strategies to reduce on-farm food waste, responding to changing technology needs in direct producer to consumer marketing, um, and covering expenses related to food safety certification or improvements. So here is the list of eligible entities. What I will say is this program, as well as the local foods promotion program, are generally envisioned as sort of often benefiting multiple entities. So you'll see here, you have to be a US owned and located business to apply for this, but you can be an agricultural business or cooperative, community supported agriculture network or association, a food council, economic development corporation, local government, nonprofit and public benefit corporation, producer networks or associations, regional farmers markets authorities, or tribal governments. So it's a broad range of entity application types. But in general, they are looking for these programs, I think, to do good, not just for one business. So agricultural businesses are an eligible entity. But the goal isn't really just to grow one specific business in general. They're looking for sort of impacts that help multiple businesses or organizations. Um, I mention that just because later there is a program, the Value Added Producer Grant, which we'll get to, that is really more focused on helping individual businesses. So that's who's eligible to apply for the Farmers Market Promotion Program. There are a few different types of programs they envision funding, um, and a few different applications, or two different kinds of applications, I guess. So there's these different project types. Capacity building has a funding range of 50 to 250,000. The community development, training, and technical assistance has a bigger funding range of 100 to 500,000. And then there's these two turnkey applications, the turnkey marketing and promotion and the turnkey recruitment and training. Both of those are $50 to $100,000 projects. Those turnkey applications you see have a shorter duration, so they're envisioning a 2-year project. The other ones are a 3-year project. Your project doesn't necessarily have to take all of those 3 years, but it can't go beyond that without requesting an extension. And you can see these different descriptions of what the goals are for. So capacity building, as you might guess, is to develop long-term organizational capacity of direct to producer to consumer markets. The community development, training, and technical assistance is to support outreach, training, and technical assistance. Pretty straightforward. Turnkey marketing and promotion is to support marketing and promotion activities. And here's the important thing: through a set of 5 predefined activities. And then turnkey recruitment and training is to support vendor and producer recruitment and training activities through a set of 5 predefined activities. Now, those last two, those turnkeys, those have been developed over the past couple of years in an effort to do that goal of simplifying applications. So those are more simple applications. The USDA has gone through like what are common things that farmers markets or other organizations applying for these funds do, and they've come up with those predefined activity lists. So those turnkey applications, they're for smaller funding amounts, but the application has been streamlined. You don't have to come up with your activities. You have to do a certain number of those predefined activities. So it's an easier way to apply for some of those. So that's one of the big things that's changed over the past few years, is the development of those turnkeys to make the application process more accessible. They're easier applications, so a little bit lighter lift for smaller organizations or folks that don't have as much experience applying for federal grants. One very important thing to note here is that all of these require a cost share. For this program, it's 25%. So if you're asking for a $100,000 grant, you would have to come up with a $25,000 match. Um, on the cost share for the farmers market promotion program, that can include both a cash match or an in-kind match. So if you are spending your time, effort, or have other people doing that to support your project, the value of that time could be counted as part of the match, or other kinds of in-kind contributions. So it doesn't have to be 25% in cash, but it does need to total at least 25% of the federal ask.
Hey, Tom,
Yep.
we had a question. If 50K is the minimum that you can ask
Uh-huh.
for those grants, and does that include, I guess, the match? Um,
So the numbers here is on that funding range. That is the federal funds. So that would not include the match. So if you asked for 50K, my math is kind of rusty. That'd be something 17,000-ish. 17.5 maybe would be the additional match. So the total project budget would be, yeah, like 67.5 or whatever. Or if I do the 100, it's easier. That's 125. That makes sense.
well, you can't ask for less than 50,000 of federal funds. Is that
That's
correct?
right.
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah, that is the minimum on those. So, um, all right. Any other questions before I dive into the next program, the local food promotion program?
That was the main one so far.
Awesome. Okay, so the local food promotion program, almost everything I'm going to say here, except for the goals and sort of the specific funding types, is going to be very similar to the farmers market promotion program. So those programs are set up very similarly, except instead of doing that direct to consumer marketing, which is the kind of overriding goal of the farmers market promotion program, the Local Foods Promotion Program, or LFPP, is funding projects that develop, coordinate, and expand local and regional food business enterprises that engage as intermediaries in indirect producer to consumer marketing to help increase access to availability and locally and regionally produced foods or agricultural products. So this is where we're thinking about things like food hubs or other businesses that are like aggregating from farmers and distributing, or producer networks maybe that fill that same role. This would be a kind of project that would be, or a source of funding to support those kinds of projects. So to be a little more specific here, this is really supporting processing, aggregation, and distribution and storage of locally and regionally produced foods that are marketed in that way, including value added products, encouraging the development of value added products. You notice that goal is exactly the same as the farmers market promotion program. Um, assisting with business development plans and feasibility studies, developing marketing strategies, facilitating regional food chain coordination, which is also a goal of the FMPP, but uh, here it says including that mid-tier value chain, promoting new business opportunities to reduce on-farm food waste, responding to changing technology needs in indirect producer to consumer marketing. So this could be, a software platform that helps connect producers to consumers, something like that. Um, and covering expenses related to food safety certification and improvements. So again, a lot of these sort of focus focus points are similar to the farmers market promotion program, but the goal is in that intermediary or that mid-tier value chain. So businesses serving that or groups serving that area would be more likely to go after a local foods promotion program funding rather than a farmers market promotion program. Um, the list of eligible entities here, I am not going to read this because it's exactly the same list as the farmers market promotion program. And there are on some of these other grants coming up here some different entities that are eligible, but just note that again, this is a pretty broad list of entities. Agricultural businesses are listed and cooperatives, but I think just to underline the point here, this program is not really specifically designed to support one individual business. So your business needs to be having an impact on that broader food system, or a group of businesses that helps more than one enterprise. I think is kind of the goal of these. Um, so these have a different list of sort of 4 different project types. So there's planning and implementation, that is, pretty straightforward. If you're planning, you're coming up with a plan. So often organizations will start off maybe with a planning grant for this and then apply in a later funding round for an implementation to implement the plan they've developed. So a planning grant is 25 to 100,000, implementation 100 to 500,000. So, smaller in scope. A planning grant likewise is 24 months versus 36 months, and helps, come up with that plan. And then implementation would be to carry that out. Now, you don't have to have done a planning grant to get the implementation grant. If you have a plan that you've come up with on your own, you could just go out after that full implementation grant from get-go. For the local food promotion program, there are also 2 of these turnkeys. So there's turnkey marketing and promotion. So if you have, a local food system or producer group or whatever that wants to do promotion, you could maybe go for this turnkey that has sort of a predefined list of activities you can do. The other thing I think I forgot to mention about these turnkeys is like those predefined lists are really all you can do using those grant funds. So if you want to do 3 of those 5 things, but you want to do something else that's not on their list, that would be where you would probably go to that more full application rather than the turnkey. And then the turnkey for recruitment and training is again going after vendor or producer recruitment or training. So that could be, food safety showed up on both of those lists. So that might be something where you're training your producers on food safety. And so that would be something you would use that kind of turnkey grant for. Again, local foods promotion program requires a 25% cost share. And again, for this program, that is available as a mix of cash contributions or in-kind contributions. All right, moving on. This one's a mouthful. I don't know, they all kind of are a mouthful, but Regional Food Systems Partnership Program just doesn't roll off the tongue. But I am going to try and call it that because we are going to talk about the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program. So you get too many RFSs and it gets confusing. So the Resilient Food Systems Partnership Program is, kind of in the same vein. It's an AMS program, Ag Marketing Service Program. It has a lot of similarities in some of the technical details with the farmers market promotion program and the local foods promotion program, but conceptually it's kind of totally different because this is really about creating partnerships. It's not just about doing those kinds of projects either for direct or mid-tier markets like we talked about. These could be doing any of those things, but the focus of these programs is on building these partnerships whose goal is to develop local and regional food systems. So the partners, some of them can be sort of defined in the application, but in the process of this, you can include new partners. So here, the eligible entity list is a little bit different. If you see here, I've got these 2 little highlighted boxes. So that first list is eligible entities. And that list is pretty much the same as the farmers market promotion program or the local foods promotion program. And whoever applies for the Regional Food Systems Partnership Program has to be one of these eligible entities. Now, what is unique about this is then there is this second list down there that's highlighted, which is eligible partners, including state agencies or regional authorities, philanthropic corporations, institutions of higher education, private corporations, commercial, federal, or farm credit system lending institutions. So a lot of those organizations have not appeared on the eligible entity list, but they are eligible to be partners here. And what kind of defines these partnerships in the title of the program, Regional Food Systems Partnerships, is when you are applying, you have to be an eligible entity has to submit the application, but you have to have one or more partners in your application. And those partners could either be other eligible entities or something from that eligible partner list. So, so you have to the application has to be submitted by a partnership or by an eligible entity on behalf of a partnership. Now, as the project goes along, you can add additional partners. So if you have several organizations that are working together on this regional food system, but you say, we don't know everybody who might be involved in this project, you can add partners throughout the time, but you have to have multiple organizations already cooperating to submit the application. For the Regional Food Systems Partnership Program, there are only two types. So there is a planning and design type, which has a 2-year duration. The minimum award is 100,000. The maximum award is 250,000 for that type. And then there's the implementation and expansion, which has a 3-year duration. And that is a minimum award of 250,000 up to $1 million. So again, you don't have to have a planning and design project before you get an implementation and expansion project. In fact, like K-State Research and Extension currently has one of these Regional Food Systems Partnership Program grants. Kansas Rural Center is a partner on that grant, and that is in that implementation and expansion. I think when we applied, it was just called implementation. But there wasn't a planning grant submitted. We kind of developed the plan outside of that and just went for the implementation because it's like we know what we want to do. We don't need to spend 2 years talking about it. Now here is the kicker, and probably why I put the cost share for each of these programs. So this also requires a 25% cost share of the total federal portion of the grant. But in the Regional Food Systems Partnership Program, that is only cash. So no in-kind contributions would be eligible for that 25%, which means if you're going for the full full range of it, you're going for that $1 million implementation grant, you need to have $250,000 on your own that you can commit to it. So that is one of the things that makes this, sort of a bigger application to do. It's often, I don't want to say easy, but using a number of people who are contributing time to a project, it's often somewhat straightforward to come up with a decent amount of in-kind contribution as a match to a grant application. For this one, that doesn't matter. You've got to come up with the cash. So the Regional Food Systems Partnership Program is unique from those other two in that way. Now we're going to change direction just a little bit and talk about the Value Added Producers Grant. This is also one of the LAMP grants, but it is not currently open. So if you're listening to this and this sounds interesting, the next application window is probably sometime next spring, usually early spring. I've seen open application windows from like March to May. This year, I don't remember when it opened, but applications closed in April. So you want to be looking earlier in the year, keeping your eye on this. The Value Added Producer Grant is something that is more focused on individual businesses, I would say, as a goal. And so this goal is can be used for planning or working capital projects that are related to producing and marketing a value-added agricultural product. So what's a value-added product, you ask? Um, you know, if you grow strawberries and you make those into strawberry jam, that is a value-added process. At least in the past, and I can't guarantee they're going to do this in future years. Uh, but the USDA has also considered local marketing as a value add. So if you are creating a locally marketed product, they have in the past considered that a value add because you're not just throwing it out into the sort of commodity market or the broader markets. You're trying to create a sort of a distinct product and adding value by that sort of local labeling or branding. Um, anyway, some things that can be covered by the value added producer grant. There are, I guess I'll jump ahead. I didn't organize these slides just quite right. There are two different kinds of these. There's the planning and then the working capital. So for that planning grant, you might be conducting feasibility studies, developing a business plan or improving your business plan, developing a specific marketing plan for a value-added product. And then the working capital types of grants could cover things like processing cost, marketing and advertising expenses, some inventory and salary expenses if they're related to, sort of marketing that value-added product. Um, so this is for this current year. So this number might change next year, but this year there was about $30 million available. There were those two different kinds of grants, as I mentioned, the planning grant, which is 75 up to $75,000. The working capital was up to $250,000. This also has a matching fund requirement, but this one's kind of steep. It's 100% matching fund. So if you were to apply for that $250,000 working capital grant, you would need to come up with $250,000 of match. Um, this one does not require that to be all in cash. There is a certain percentage, which I don't recall off the top of my head, that I think needs to be in cash, a small percentage. The rest can be in kind. Since this is value added processing, they historically have considered maybe the value of crops as part of that. So not just the value of your time that you might be focused on this project, but also the value of things like, so if you're making that strawberry jam, the value of the strawberries that go into that could be considered part of your match. So this one, as I mentioned, and it's in the title here, Value Added Producers Grant, is very focused on producers. So this does have a very different list of eligible entities. So who can apply for this program? Agricultural producers, which could be a harvesting group or a steering committee, agricultural producer groups, farmer or rancher cooperatives, a majority controlled producer based business venture. So I can talk about that and the steering committee in a second, as defined by the program regulation. So that's who's eligible to apply. So I have experience with this grant, working with the KC Food Hub. I think they've gotten two of those. I was really active in the first value-added producer grant that we got. And at that point, we were a group of producers. We were a steering committee. So we were eligible to apply as a steering committee. And one of the things that that grant helped us do was like organize into an official cooperative. Um, but as a result of that, and actually that separately in Kansas cooperative law, but even if we had made an LLC, producers would have had to control the majority of the business. And as an organization that was like aggregating and marketing food, um, using the value added producer grant, the majority of that we had to get from the producer members of the cooperative. We couldn't go, and buy a bunch from other people, and use value added producer grant funds to cover that. We had to work with our producer base. for at least 51% of the product. So the value added producer grant does have some, sort of unique twists. It is under that same local agricultural marketing program umbrella in the Farm Bill, but it is a little distinct from the other ones because it's administered by USDA Rural Development versus the Agricultural Marketing Service. And this one, more than those other grants we've talked about, is really explicitly focused on a producer or a group of producers. So producer is really key for this. Um, so what I just want to point out about all of these grants in the local agricultural marketing program, there are resources for all of them on the websites that sort of cover each of those programs. You'll find, if it's open, you'll find the request for applications. So those first three, those are all up there right now. They'll often have FAQs, or frequently asked questions. Some of those get very into the details, and those can be really important because sometimes there's like a very fine line between an activity that can get funded and then an activity that can't get funded. So if you're putting, some of your time in there, either as a match or getting salary reimbursement for that, you have to make sure that you're spending that time in a way that can be funded by that grant. Or you have to make sure that all of your deliverables are in there. And so people will often ask questions, kind of clarifying that, and those will um, show up in those FAQs. They'll often have a webinar. And so for all three of those that are open right now, there are webinar recordings, which is USDA staff walking through that, and they are far more knowledgeable about the details of their specific programs than I am, and can highlight any things that really trip people up. I just know where I've been tripped up on these programs before and what I've learned watching those in the previous years. And then another thing, especially if you're thinking about projects for next year, you can find lists of previously funded projects to kind of give you ideas, or to let you know, has somebody done the exact same thing you were hoping to do? Often, if that's in your community, you might already be aware of that. But it can help you get ideas of, what kind of is the scope of what they're looking for. I will say, in the request for applications, I could probably spend a whole webinar just walking through any request for applications and highlighting the important things. Um, They'll usually tell you really what's important in the grant. They will highlight the purpose of that grant, if there are any special things, if it's changed since the last time that was offered. So if you go read these requests for applications this year, but you're not planning to apply until next year, you're just trying to get your ideas flowing. Next year, make sure you check out the section that says like what's new this year, because they will change something, but they usually are pretty good at highlighting that. And then there's also usually like a scoring rubric or some sort of notes about how applications are scored. So it will tell you like what are the areas they really emphasize, what is responsible for a really large portion of your score, and that can really help you figure out how to focus your efforts. All right. I am going to change course now. We are leaving the world of LAMP grants and talking about the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program. This is super timely because this program, it is USDA Ag Marketing Service funds, but it's administered by the state of Kansas here in Kansas. So every state did it a little bit differently. I think Kansas was really one of the leaders in doing this. I think we got our applications out first or second among all 50 states. And we are opening round two today. I guess I shouldn't say we because we're not, but the state of Kansas is opening round two today. Um, this is a little bit different than those. Like I mentioned, the LAMP are in the Farm Bill. So they are programs that more or less, as long as the Farm Bill kind of stays the same, or if the next Farm Bill is built upon this sort of existing one, and these programs don't get cut out, those will continue every year. The Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program was more of a one-time program. So unless we get it added to the next farm bill, this is kind of a one-time opportunity, and this is the second round of that in Kansas, but it's still the same chunk of funds. So the funding was set aside. Kansas used some in round one, had some left over, so they're doing round two. So it's not a program that's going to come back next year. So if you're on the fence about applying for this, really give it serious thought. Um, Today is the first day that you can even look at the request for applications. So you're not kind of on as tight of a timeline on this. Applications are due July 18th, so you have quite a few weeks to look through it, and it's a relatively simple application, and it's simplified equipment only grants. So if you looked at this in the first round, there were a couple of different ways to apply. There was a larger infrastructure program and larger equipment only grants. This go around, it's only equipment only grants. The range of funding is from 10,000 to 50,000. There is no match required. Um, One thing to note, since this is the second round, if you or your organization or whoever got a grant during that first round of RFSI, you can't get another one. So there's only one sort of grant per entity um, through both rounds of funding. So if you didn't get one in round one, you've got another chance. If you did, you can't apply in round two. Um, the other thing to note, because this is like ending this sort of one-time program, there is a pretty tight timeline on getting those funds spent. So all equipment purchases must be made by December 31, 2025. The link to the Kansas Department of Agriculture page for this will have a link to the application portal. So unlike the other ones where you apply through grants.gov, this one you apply through the Kansas Department of Agriculture. They have a submittable website. Um, so that's where you'll go to apply for that. The purpose of this is really to expand capacity and infrastructure for aggregating, processing, manufacturing, storing, transportation, wholesaling, distributing of local and regional agricultural products. This is really targeted at food crops for humans, and you see this like highlighted area below that. So there are a bunch of ineligible things. So meat and poultry products aren't eligible because there were some other USDA grants to support those. Wild caught seafood, animal feed and forage, fiber, landscaping, a whole range of agricultural products are not eligible for the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program. So just be aware of that as you're considering an application. And in Kansas here, they have three main funding priorities supporting some research that they've done, and that is funding to help aggregation points, funding to support food processing infrastructure, and funding for food storage. You might think of, refrigerated walk-in coolers or something. So food storage, all of those things are sort of the priority funding areas. So just some examples of things that they've listed here. There are some very program specific terms, but this is really just for equipment. So it's not about, you buy a $10,000, whatever, $15,000 walk-in cooler. Um, this program could pay for that. It's not going to pay for the electrician to hook it up. It is just for the equipment. So thinking about things like on-farm processing, preservation, cold storage, post-harvest handling and cleaning things you need, um, aggregator warehouse and storage space. So you can't build something or buy something with this. But if you needed some, racks in your warehouse or things like equipment like that, you could do that. Purchase of freezing equipment, freezer or cold storage, processing, canning, preservation. Um, if you're doing some grain stuff, drying, hulling, shelling, milling, cooking, baking, juicing, distilling. So all of those things where you're processing foods. would be eligible equipment purchases. So pretty long list. This is eligible entities again here. So agricultural producers or groups, nonprofit organizations who, note here, are operating the middle of the supply chain activities. So processing, aggregation, or distribution. For-profit organizations doing similarly. But if you're a for-profit organization, you must comply with the Small Business Association small business definition. And there's a link to that in the request for application. So if you're, a giant corporation, you can't apply for these funds. Um, Local government entities can if they are working in this sort of supply chain, tribal governments, institutions like schools or hospitals. So again, a pretty broad list of organization types, but you must be doing some of this sort of work in the, processing, aggregation, distribution to qualify. So that's a really quick run through of all of those grant programs. I just wanted to close with a few notes before I take a few minutes of questions here. So everything I've talked about today, these are reimbursement grants. So if you get that Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Grant for $50,000, I'm just choosing a round number, you would need to spend that money before you and then you would get reimbursed. So none of these grants are going to give you a check for that money. They will reimburse you once expenses are made. So that's really important when you're applying to think about cash flow. Can you manage that? Can you get a loan to help you manage that? But that needs to be part of your planning process. You can apply for several grant programs. Sometimes, like, you can't have two of the same. Like, Kansas Rural Center currently has a local food promotion program grant that won't close out till later this year. We are not eligible to apply for a local foods promotion program grant because we have one open already. But we could apply for a regional food systems partnership grant, but we can't double dip, and that's makes common sense. But if we apply for something that is getting paid for by one grant, we can't um, get paid for the same thing with another federal grant. Likewise, you can't use any federal funds for um, for that match. So I said there's a 25% match on a couple of those grants, and some of that could be in kind. If my time is getting paid by our current local food promotion program, I couldn't use that time as a match for that regional food systems partnership. You can't use federal funds to provide your match. They are looking for your entity or you to provide that cost share to have some buy-in to those programs. Um, One thing I will say is, like, anything I say, and the USDA staff is really good about not varying from the script, so I won't say anything they say. But anything I say or anybody else says, like on a webinar, or like, maybe you're working with a grant writer, they tell you something. Um, Whatever is written in that request for applications, that's the definitive answer. So if I tell you, yeah, you can include that in your grant, but it says in the request for proposals, like, you can't do that, that is the definitive answer. So don't ever doubt that. The other thing I'll say is, grant writing is a skill you get better with practice. So if you're if you've never written a grant before and you're considering it, your first one might be a big challenge. You might not get funded. But if you try again, maybe you'll have better luck the second time, and it gets easier, and you get better at it. So don't be discouraged if your first grant application isn't successful. This is a way that there are funds out there to support good projects. So being able to access those is a skill that you can help develop. Just for grant writing support, I wanted to highlight a few things. There is some help for that through the Heartland Regional Food Business Center. We have staff that is working as part of that Regional Food Business Center. Highlight Leslie Montee, whose emails here. She can help you. We can't write grants for you. The Regional Food Business Center can't write grants, but we can provide feedback, help you work through ideas, ask you questions to refine your project ideas or budgets. So we can provide support in that. Um, Likewise, K-State Research and Extension, they do grant writing workshops that can be very helpful in helping you figure out how to do that. They have one coming up on Tuesday, July 29th at the Local Foods Summit. So if you register for that, it's the day before the summit. So there's some workshops the day before. The summit's on the 30th there, but you can go and do a full day grant writing workshop. They do offer that sometimes through local extension offices or online courses. So if you miss that opportunity, definitely check out K-State Research and Extension's grant writing workshops. And with that, I'm open for any questions.
Hey, Tom, we had
Yeah.
a question if you have any sense of when applicants who are accepted for RFSI funds would be notified that they are being funded.
I don't have a sense on that. Let's see. I don't. It's been long enough since the first round that I don't recall what the time frame was. But it usually, depending on how many applications it takes, there's a number of uh, like compliance checks that the Kansas Department of Agriculture has to go through, then review the application, and then when they select their pool, they send them to the USDA, and the USDA has to approve them all. So there's a bunch of layers. So it wouldn't surprise me, if that took a couple of months. So if we're talking about a July deadline, like maybe if you find out in September, that's optimistic timeframe. Don't quote me on that. It might be, but so you better be ready to go. As part of that application process, you will need, I think, to provide quotes on things. So you should have a decent idea of what things cost, where to buy them. But then, yeah, once you get funded, those funds have to be expended by the end of the year. So there will be a tight turnaround there at some point to like, you got to get it going. So
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that, if you get your quote here in June or July for a piece of equipment and the costs go up in the interim before you get funded, they will not increase your allocation from the funding. Like you just have to eat that cost, and that's worth kind of thinking about too a little bit.
that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, I know that happened to some people in the first round. Things get more expensive. Yeah, there that if you give a quote and say you request $35,000 for, I can't think of a piece of equipment off the top of my head that would cost that, but two or three things that are equipment, and they go up and you end up spending $40,000. Like if you've been granted 35, they're not going to give you the extra five just because things got more expensive.
Think we maybe saw last time that KDA worked through it fairly quickly, the Kansas Department of Agriculture, but then things took quite a bit longer at USDA, and it's just variable. It's always hard to know, how that's going to go, and so
Yeah,
hard to answer
yeah.
that question.
And yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, just to follow up on that with like the LAMP grants, so they're due. They say in the request for applications that people that the project start date is like October 1st. So that's October 1st of this year. Um, Even on a regular year, I guess, when applications are due a little bit earlier, we've seen notifications not come out until early in October when your project was supposed to start October 1. So sometimes that, yeah, application processing can take longer than expected. Um, yeah. Any other questions? You don't have to put them in the chat now. You feel free to unmute and ask away. All right. Well, Yeah, I see Ryan's put in the chat there. Certainly the grant opportunities we've talked about today are not a list of all the opportunities. We started out with the LAMP grants because those three are open right now, and then added the RFSI grant. But there are other opportunities. Sarah is a great option for funding on-farm research. Also, you can do some food system work. Um, but for people doing innovative things, Sarah can be a great option. They usually have a partnership grant, a farmer rancher grant, which those applications usually both open in August. The partnership grants usually do sometime in October. Farmer rancher usually the first, I want to say first Thursday of December. Um, so those are coming up. If none of these pieces fall into place for you, but you have something you're looking to fund, definitely keep your eye out for those grant opportunities. We'll do one last call for questions and then I'll sign off. Anybody have anything? All right. Well, really appreciate your time, everyone. Thanks for attending. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or any of our staff here at the Kansas Rural Center. We like to help people doing great things to support sustainable local food and regional food system development. So thanks for your time. Have a good day.